I think that what happens is when, Mother Nature is kind of bucking up at us, I think that um, we all kind of get put in a place where our anxieties are magnified and people are kind of forced to deal with themselves and their own shadows as it pertains to their family dynamics and business, relationship dynamics. Yeah, it's been crazy to reconnect with self in this retrograde period that has been, you know, COVID-19 and being quarantined amidst like civil unrest and all this. It's been absolutely crazy. I don't know. I mean, is this real life? Is it real life? I don't know what's going on. It's wild right now.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. Today is a very special show with a very special new musician. His name is Eric Burton, and he is the lead singer for Black Pumas, who is absolutely blowing up. They are everything from #1 on Amazon, #2 on iTunes. Probably by the time this comes out, they'll be #1, trending on Twitter. They performed at the Presidential Inauguration. There's just so much going on for this band. And today I talked to Eric, and, I don't know much about them. And I find that it's in the conversations that I'm not sure what to expect. And I don't know much about that. They kind of end up surprising me in the most beautiful ways. So Eric and I had a really open, vulnerable, spiritual, esoteric conversation about a lot about, sort of the energetics of the world and intention and honesty and vulnerability and truth. And again, it wasn't so directly all about the music. Tell me about making this song. It was more about how is great music made and where does it come from as a source. And so the interview is really, really deep. But if you want to listen to him on the shallow end of the pool, I mean, Black Pumas are phenomenal. Their music is beautiful, and they're really coming onto the scene in a really, really a big, aggressive way. And I know that the music will resonate. And today we're going to talk about why you love it. Thanks for doing this with everything you have going on. My goodness, how was congrats on being a part of the inauguration? How was that?
It was absolutely amazing. Nothing short of fantastic. Obviously being an American and being a musician and a Black man in America, it felt really nice to be put in a situation where the voice is obviously heard. I feel like a lot of us musicians and people of minority groups, really appreciate people who represent the voiceless. So to a degree, it really felt like that.
Yeah. Well, on the way to oneness, right? There's always bumps in the road, which is 2020, right?
Yeah.
I feel like 2020 was an explosion of just
right.
that sort of energy. And it's like, I feel like I heard this expression this morning. It's like, sometimes it's one step back, two steps forward. Does that feel like what 2020 was?
I'm still processing it. A lot has happened. I mean, I between like going through a breakup, dealing with family stuff, and just trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy has been really crazy for all of us. And then to add the rise of the Black Pumas to my story, it's been completely unreal. And I got to tell you, I'm thankful, Danica, that I have the team that I have, as they have been very supportive.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned, you had touched on some things that hit that strike a note with me, which is like breakup, and then I had them moving and everything. So to me, 2020 was about like a burning down of anything that isn't going to benefit us moving forward.
Most definitely.
Can you tell me about what you learned from the year?
I think that just like, much like probably most of us or anyone else, I think that what happens is when, Mother Nature is kind of bucking up at us, I think that um, we all kind of get put in a place where our anxieties are magnified and people are kind of forced to deal with themselves and their own shadows as it pertains to their family dynamics and business, relationship dynamics. Yeah, it's been crazy to reconnect with self in this retrograde period that has been, COVID-19 and being quarantined amidst like civil unrest and all this. It's been absolutely crazy. I don't know. I mean, is this real life? Is it real life? I don't know what's going on. It's wild right now.
That's my favorite thing to question is what's real? Like what's reality? Are we a simulation? Are we zeros and ones? What am I really looking at outside the window? What's happening in the world? Am I truly creating it? Is there some sort of level of existence where it's because something comes into my sort of like energy field and I keep perpetuating it in some way? I don't know. I get the indication like maybe these are like some thoughts that go on in your head. Am I off?
Most definitely. You're most definitely not off. I think that we all kind of get locked into the comfortability that is understanding different formulas to get something that we need or to go somewhere that we would like to go. And I think that in a lot of occasions we kind of forget. We forget the essence, that the essence of who we are is quite infinite. And I think that a lot of us, including myself, I'll admit that I can live quite selectively, in my own acceptance of what is, so it's an interesting conversation for sure.
I know. I want to keep that going. I know you're a musician, but I want to get to the point where this all kind of loops back in, but I think this is an interesting conversation to enter into about, perhaps how you arrive where you do with your music in all the different facets of it, whether it's the lyrics or whether it's the frequency of it, the energy of it. So I'm gonna keep this conversation going about sort of like the quantum. I mean, how deep does that rabbit hole get? Like if you always been interested in sort of the nature of reality?
I think so, to a degree. I think the most beautiful aspect of it is that I'll never understand completely. I'll never be able to conceptualize the kind of said thoughts of God, right? Like that was Albert Einstein's thing. He wanted to know the thoughts of God. And I think that we all kind of pursue that like a sense of just eternal, ness, that a sense of like just being able to like live forever, I think is, a great pursuit of mankind, probably the plight. We all want to live forever. But yeah, to conclude that, I feel like my process has been being okay with not understanding, while also diving so deep into the creative process, which is also my therapy. I started playing music because I wasn't I needed kind of an aid at a younger age. I was in high school to kind of guide through that angsty phase that most of us go through. And, being given a guitar by my youngest brother was the greatest gift, because I would just sit in my room and feel things. I mean, I never necessarily think about the actual physicality of, oh, okay, here, I'm going to play piano, or, I got my guitar and I got all these formulas. I'm going to build this and make this. For me, it's more about feeling into something that is there that I may not recognize, at face value. And then I kind of leave it up to the rest of, you guys, humanity, to take what I'm reciprocating and, ask yourself the question, is this person being honest? Because if he is, then whatever's coming from his heart is going to touch someone else's.
Well, this morning I was sitting and getting ready and having breakfast, and into my consciousness came this word or this information, which is that, and I already know this is going to resonate based on the short conversation we've already started to have, is that your music is tapping into the collective consciousness through its frequency or the energy of the song and the where it came from. It's as if it carries the energy, your energy from when you made it, and it's being transmitted through to all of us, and it's carrying this energy and we're resonating with it because it is an aspiration of the collective, of where we want to go and where we want to be and the kind of energy we want to hold. I don't know. I know that sounds very like esoteric and out there, but that's what came in this morning. I wrote it down. I literally wrote this down on a piece of paper. I was like, that's I feel like there is an aspect of your music that embodies the energy or emotion or frequency of what the collective wants, which is soul and emotion and smooth beauty. That's what I wrote down. Does that resonate?
I think that's very beautiful, Danica. That's very well articulated, eloquently enough. And I'll add to it by agreeing that I believe that the joys that we experience, to the pains that we experience, is reflective of the next person's. Like, your joy and your pain isn't separate from mine. And when I take to creating and doing my writing, I just try to be honest, because I know that I'm feeling what you're feeling to some degree. I know that there's somewhat of a ripple effect that is Danica Patrick's process that affects me in some way, shape, or form. So I just try to be honest.
It's not one, it's millions. I
exactly.
mean, you're number one on Amazon, you're number two on iTunes, you're trending on Twitter, you're performing at the inauguration. Like, this is not just me, but it has to be me to be everyone else, essentially, right? Because it's the collective. So you have to, you're sort of getting into this aspect of each of us. And so, I just think that it's so interesting. So it feels to me like there's almost, what I heard you say, it's almost like a channeling of information. Is that accurate?
Sure. I would say that we're all our own individual vessel for what is the collective, and that's just it. And then any other stories that we tell ourselves to separate us from the next person is just, you can end up down so many different rabbit holes of paths to take in your own journey. So, but yeah, this is, I don't know. I don't have too much to say about it, but
no, I think
and I do. I just don't want to, I don't want to preach at you here, but I think about these things, and I feel very lucky that I get to do this with you, first of all, and connect with anyone on a deep level, especially after last year. It's crazy.
Yeah. I love these conversations. I think that, in my opinion, this is the direction of the collective, is in this more energetic space. It's in this more sort of tapping into the energies of things instead of sort of what we see with our naked eyes. I mean, that should have been a pretty obvious thing in 2020, that, we're trying to decide what's real and what's not real anymore. And it's my intuition that we're being sort of led to this place where we're going to have to feel what's real and what's not, because energy doesn't lie. And so we have to get good at being able to feel that. And I think that people can feel your music and your truth and your energy. You had said something just a minute ago about, about this sort of, about the collective, about, my energies, your energy. And I'm trying to, where did that come from? Can you get, is there more of a root of where that awareness came from in your journey?
It comes from where it comes from for all of us. It comes from my pain. It comes from it comes from trauma. It comes from my joys, my highest, honors, and and just excitement. It's like you said, it's about feeling into it yourself, that you may be a suitable conduit to then reciprocate, your own way of making sense of what we can't tell as real or not, from time to time. So yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting subject. I think that I can only trust the feelings that I have from my experiences as I cohabitate with the rest of the world.
What are, if you're willing to share, what are some of those traumas that catapulted you into this awareness, to a deeper understanding of humanity, of yourself, right? It starts with the self and expands.
Most definitely. Yeah. I think that first of all, we have these kinds of conversations I feel, to grasp, and to grasp life, and to feel some semblance of control of what's going on in your life. And so anytime most people are out of control, it's frightening. And, I've found that, coming from busking and, on the trains to, riding 2 or 3 buses to get to the Santa Monica Pier from Athens, California, where the state of people's existence there is quite it's drastically different than the warmth that you get around people near the water. Like, no worries by the water. There's just a certain level of energetic kind of interplay that happens when you're like near a beach. But I think that for a long time, I have felt completely and utterly out of control. And my strong reason why for creating music is to, have some sort of a vehicle to reach those inner truths, and to reach some of those shadows that I may not see all the time in my reaction to the world as it is, coming from where I come from. So I guess to specifically speak to my process and what I've felt in the past, in my journey, I feel like sometimes you got to feel voiceless, especially for who I am and what I look like, where I'm at. I feel like I've seen a level of prejudices and indifferences, kind of directed at me and people around me as well. Like, it's not just about like, being responded to because I'm Black or I'm a musician, but it's also like busking on the street is kind of you're at the low end of the totem pole for social kind of acceptance. And so I felt a lot in my busking days, just there's this sense of utter loneliness. And when you're at the end of the day and someone this homeless guy takes off with your guitar, you got to chase him down, and it's like craziness. It's like I don't even know how to like look back at those days and remember like anything that was normal about picking up my guitar and taking my songs that I wrote in a very vulnerable space to then kind of almost cast my pearls amongst the rest of the people, right? Because not everyone's going to be as nice as Danica Patrick and listening to my process here.
Nice. Yeah. You haven't seen all sides of me. You obviously don't know how mean I used to be in my race car when I was racing. Right. No, that's very nice of you to say. You mentioned the word vulnerability, and I think that is an aspect of an existence, whether it's through music or whether it's through speaking or whatever, that resonates. Like, that cuts through, it cuts to the heart.
Right.
And I've always been really fascinated by music and how whether it's a speech or a song or whatever, it's like, if you're willing to go there, and I've been thinking a lot about the difference between vulnerability and transparency being something they're ready to say, right? So there might be something that's sitting and waiting and ready to be, you want to tell people and it's out there, but you know you want to, and you're comfortable talking about it. But then vulnerability is different. Vulnerability is the stuff that you're not sure you're ready to say. It's like sitting there, but you're like, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how this is going to be received. I don't know if I feel comfortable. And I feel that it seems like a lot of the magic in these sort of public deliveries is vulnerability. And I've always been fascinated how you can get there, how you can, because I would describe myself as someone who's working on vulnerability, although I'm very transparent. I'd say that vulnerability is something that I need to do a better job of, saying things that I'm not sure I'm ready to say yet. And it's sort of masked by the fact that I'm very open,
Right.
Which is transparent. And so can you feel that difference between like a message that might not, that is about transparency versus that sort of other sort of lane of vulnerability? And is that part, like, is that easy? Is that the calling of an artist? And is that part of this? These are a lot of questions, and is that part of like the magic formula of a song?
Definitely. I think, firstly, I think in many ways, our state, like our state of being, truly depends on the stories that we tell ourselves as we experience the externality that is, living in the hood or growing up rich but without love, and feeling, into all of what you're seeing, hearing, and feeling coming inward from outside of yourself. And I think that it's really actually very easy for me. It's the only way that I know how to be and to write, is from a place of vulnerability. I'm just this poor kid who grew up in Los Angeles, California, skateboarding around, and using the modality that is music to tap into my greater self. And it's actually really easy for me to do that, and to be vulnerable. I may not always know how to articulate in great depth, for whatever the reasons are, but yeah, it's easy for me to be vulnerable, actually.
Well, so I would go to venture to say then that really all of your music is in that vulnerable space.
I think so. Coupled with what kind of muddles it when it comes to making music, especially on deadlines for massive events, is sometimes that side of the business side of it tends to kind of, make the creative process a little bit foggy and maybe even in some cases less thorough in the connection, your own connectivity to yourself, because you're trying to accomplish the packaging of this product for whoever, and for the world, so that we can win a Grammy or whatever externality that we're kind of seeking. But I've always kind of it's always kind of been enough for me to venture into dark places and light places, and to feel comfortable within myself feeling into these things, because I always had the modality that was music through, my guitar. And I loved feeling and hearing, like, wow, like this is what it sounds like when I'm like turned on, or this is what I sound like when, I'm in survival mode for whatever the reason is, trying to make it as a human being around so many people who kind of, we all kind of have our stories that we kind of, we look to as guiding lights in our conversing with each other. So I think that's been like my biggest, struggle. And, I feel like I see it in like I don't know. I think it's a really big struggle to traverse the energy that is individuals with different like from different walks of life, with who may hold different ideologies. But as you said, to conclude, as you said, Danica, the most beautiful thing is, the thing that I'm most thankful for is for how universal my pains and joys are, how much that's reflective of how universal the music is for all people. Like, I mean, for, statistically, I should not, be where I'm at and, conversing and with people who I'm conversing with, because of the stories that we all tell ourselves, and we kind of being locked into such a caged reality of the mind that is almost perpetuating a certain ideology about the person. And so I'm thankful that I grew up in a family that, my grandparents were missionaries, and, my uncle's a musician, and my mom's a dancer, and we're very like theatrically, musically inclined people. And, I always went to the high schools that were diversified, and I never did all white this or all black this or whatever. I was always interjected into realities that involved different people. And so for that, and then with the aid of music for that, I feel like I've always felt like I could go anywhere and do anything that I want to do. And I've proven that to myself in like small ways and in some big ways as well.
There's an idea that it's out there, right? It's that, for source energy, we kind of hold the frequency of all aspects within ourselves. Like you've heard, like, you are the universe looking at itself kind of thing, like you are the universe. And so that would make me think that we're not actually at all separate in our understanding. Like there's an aspect of myself that can understand you, and there's an aspect of you that can understand me, because the collective consciousness of being source energy allows us this opportunity to hold this aspect. I don't know. Would you?
I agree. That's very well put. Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I appreciate that perspective, because it does acknowledge that although you and I have different backgrounds, it does acknowledge the fact that we connect on such a deep level. It's, you can't even, I don't know if you can even quantify what we're sharing right now. It's so beautiful. It's the coolest thing.
Where do you sit spiritually? I'm curious. Did you go to church growing up?
I did. I reluctantly, my parents, my grandparents made me join the choir.
Well, obviously, you have a song. You're the songbird of our generation.
Hey, well, I appreciate that.
You have a beautiful voice.
I received that. Thank you, Danica. So yeah, I grew up in church, and I also grew up in and around. Like my uncle worked with, he did like outreach with children programs, and just he's worked with teens a lot, and so I've kind of grown up around troubled souls to a degree, and to understand someone, or to hold that aspect that you just recently spoke of with someone from a completely different walk of life who, was kind of propelled down a path of misunderstanding and confusion. For that, I'm very thankful, because I see myself in these individuals, and for being able to be around them in the first place. That the idea that I'm separate from the rest of the world begins to kind of dissolve, a bit, maybe more so than someone who's always lived in one place, talked to the same people, less exposure to the rest of the world.
Right. And that exists in so many places. I mean, I've experienced it. I've, walked through the world. I lived in England for a while. I grew up in the Midwest. I lived sort of in the South. I drove NASCAR. I've lived out in California. Like I'm in Arizona now. I mean, I have seen, and there are so many sort of pockets of the world that, I think the ability to run from things is becoming much less likely and much more in your face, as far as accepting all aspects of life and people, and respecting and getting to understand it, right? There's so many pockets that they don't actually want to, like, it's a
It's
block
almost
out.
it's almost way too much work to hold on to the buildup that is the confusion that we've all kind of experienced just in last year alone, and the illness, the diseases, and everything that we've experienced, the losses. It becomes to be too much to hold on to. So you see people, and I myself, I'll drink, and sometimes I use firefighters to negate that. There's an aspect here that I may not be always cognizant of or seeing, and but I think that, especially after last year, most of us have gotten to a breaking point where you're either, you're going to drink yourself to death and commit suicide or get a divorce or whatever it is, or you're going to let go of your idea of how the world should spin around, and how people should be, or how your life should look externally. And so I think that we're all in this like retrograde process that is retreating back to what is and always has been, in our own eternal peace and love that we have access to, and as part of source.
Gosh, yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful what you just said. This process, it's a house of cards, right? So when you start to break through to the foundation of someone, which could be religion, it could be, their everyday life and their patterns and their belief system, then it becomes a house of cards. You pull the bottom and the whole life gets turned upside down. And I love the saying that your new life is going to cost you your old one. I mean, I don't love it, but it's just true.
Yeah.
And so, that can be it's almost like the subconscious is aware of this sort of daunting, going to call it task, because once you start on the journey, it's such a ride. Like the spiritual journey is such a ride, and you never want to get off, even though, God, sometimes it's just so much, and it's so painful. But there's always lessons in it. And that, to me, that's why it's called growing pains.
Right. My favorite people to look to in that so I have some very stoic friends who I sometimes question. I'm like, come on, bro. You gotta be mad sometimes. You gotta be upset sometimes. It's we're friends. You can talk to me, about things. But I do tend to admire those who understand the idea that your spiritual journey, or whatever it is, your process as a human being, is always in movement. It's not something that you can say no to. I think saying no to the journey that you're inevitably taking anyway, with the by way of choices that you're making, it's just going to make it, to me, it makes it harder. You see people when we have like these, I loved learning about like how, like, mind over matter, and how our biochemistry is affected by our thought process. And, as we've experienced traumatic experiences, our tissues inside hold on to these things. And you can see people like holding on to them. Like you got just weird looking faces and all kinds of like, from holding on to, and not understanding that, living in a mindset of abundance as opposed to a mindset of lack is kind of easier said than done, but definitely key. So yeah, I'm still understanding it.
Have you had that sort of spiritual house burning down. Now I'll back up to say, like, you know, you have an issue, it's coming to you, it's kind of knocking at the door, and then it pounds down, you know, pounding at the door, and then it breaks it down, then it comes in and terrorizes the place, and then finally it's like, I'm going to burn your house down.
Oh yeah.
Have you had something in your life where you're like, so yeah, I had to get to the house burning down part?
Most definitely. I mean, as mentioned before, I grew up in church. You know, I grew up under the jurisdiction of my grandparents and my mom and my uncle and brothers and sisters. And I think that when I decide to commit to something, I am 100% committed. I choose my friends very wisely. You know, my friends know I don't play games. You know, and because when I believe in something, I tend to believe like really hard, and you know, and that's not to say that like I am unwilling to be malleable to the degree that I'm able to accept different ideas as part of my own. But I had to get to a place where, you know, I was balancing my relationship with Source and God in conjunction with what my life looks like. You know, it's like, well, you know, if you know, God is real, then why don't I have any money? I want money, you know, and or whatever it is, you know. And for a lot of people, I don't mean to, you know, say that facetiously, because, you know, lack of money is kind of and resources is a big deal for a lot of people.
It's a real thing. So, I mean, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But it's also a mindset, like you said from the very beginning, about your perception of a situation. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you think to yourself how much you want something, it's my understanding from an energetic standpoint that if you want something so badly, there's also, you're carrying an equal resonance of awareness of a lack of.
Definitely. And with that said, I remember growing up and being encouraged. He said, I remember one of the pastors or my uncle said, Eric, I want you to start thinking about what your wife is going to be like and who she is and what she does. And I would be lying if I told you right now that I thought of Danica Patrick in my head. But it is a really, really nice reflection to, you know, just have a conversation with an intellectual person, very beautiful and talented. And, you know, those are a part of what I kind of see myself kind of cooperating and collaborating with. So for that, I'll maintain my mindset of abundance and receive it.
Well, thank you. It's very nice of you to say.
You're welcome. It was kind of like long-winded, but yeah.
Oh no, I love it. I love this conversation. It's so fun for me to explore these sort of corners of the mind where it's not always, we don't always go there. And I have, you know, a bunch of questions to ask you that are so much more sort of like linear and lateral with the, you know, the world that you live in. But this is one that, to me, my show is about sort of planting seeds with people. And sure. I'm not trying to make anyone think anything, but, you know, you arrived at this conversation for some reason. You're still listening for some reason. And in this sort of journey, some people are far along on their spiritual journey. Some people are beginning it. Some people don't even know they're about to begin it. Some people might never. But it's in planting these seeds through this conversation and exposing people to these other aspects of life, these other thoughts and experiences, and planting these seeds for people so that maybe when they hear it the second time, they're like, okay, maybe I remember hearing about this. There's a difference between hearing things for the first and the second time. It becomes sort of a pattern and maybe a sign for somebody. So I'm so grateful for you to entertain this conversation of sort of like depth and more in the sort of energetic realm of existence, because to me it's really all we are. I mean, like going back to the nature of reality, you know, I loved interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson and going, okay, so I'm pretty sure I heard that if you combined all humans into actual matter, we're the size of an apple. Is that right? He's like, Yep, basically. So I'm like,
Wow.
that just blows your mind to trying
Yeah.
to wrap your head around what we're really doing here. And isn't the goal to be happy? Like we're all trying to figure out how to be more peaceful, how to be happier. And it's only in knowing more about the nature of our reality that we can start to figure out how to actually get there.
Most definitely. I think that the first step is talking about it. And for that, I'm like really thankful that, you know, I've found myself on such a path that I would be talking to you about this stuff. You know, it's kind of, it feels a little bit bizarre but it's like, you know, it's really cool too. It's like, wow, okay. Like I could have been talking about the Super Bowl with so-and-so over a Miller Lite. I don't know. But
are you playing at the Super Bowl now too?
I don't know. I don't know. There might be something happening. But we'll see. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
You know, in all of these conversations, there's so much authenticity to your music. And I feel like from a musical standpoint, from a musician standpoint, when you talk about labels and expectations and identifying yourself in a genre, which I think it's crazy to hear that you loved hip hop because you're not really singing hip hop. So I'm curious about that. But then it leads me to just this sort of idea about control. And I feel like you've heard so many times with artists how, you know, there's an expectation level and there's deadlines, and then there's sort of staying inside of the working parameters of your music and what's selling. And I'm just curious what you're going to be. Are you going to maintain your creative control? Is that something that ends up getting lost because of, you know, money and labels, or is that really just someone getting lost in that sort of space where they just end up becoming people pleasers as opposed to, and short-term gains versus long-term of keeping the integrity? Because look, your music's timeless. Like that's something so magical about it, is that there's like such a there's such an old school sort of feel and sound, but it's blowing up in 2021. So
yeah, it's so wild. I love how distinctively it's reflective of, you know, some of the oldest American music and gospel and, you know, Negro spirituals to, you know, blues and rock and roll, and as it's progressed.
What's the genre? If you were to put a genre, I'm like, what do you call it?
I guess you would just call it soul music. I mean, I don't usually call it. I'm just being sincere, and I usually don't like to call it because I don't know that I don't know that I'm a soul artist. I mean, I'm doing my best impression, you know, but keep your hat on tight, because I feel like you guys have given me some time and space to feel okay with being completely myself, you know. So that's what I'm looking forward to mostly.
Because you started there.
Yeah. And there's a warmth there is the point that I'm making. It's like, you know, it's like a coming home, you know. I want the music to feel like the safest place for anyone, and everyone's invited to the party at my place.
It does. I mean, I think that's what's happening.
I don't know if I answered your question. I don't know if I did or not.
I just want to know, basically your fans and for the greater good of the collective, like we want to know you're going to get to keep making your vulnerable, real, authentic, sincere, and maybe this is the beginning of a new category of music. Like there is no name for it because it can't be pinned down. And there's sort of the thought of, you know, once you name something, you restrict its potential by naming it. Like as soon as you name this a microphone, it can't be anything else. As soon as you call a bird, it can't be anything else. So as soon as you name your music something, it can't be anything else. And so maybe sincere is the name of your music, of the genre, because it's just whatever is sincere in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just the easiest thing to do. You know, I feel like the misconception, you know, in this industry, and I'm sure in many other industries, you can kind of, you know, relate it. Is I think that the perception is that like you can make, you know, you can throw something together really quick, acoustic or electronically. I won't point to a specific genre, but I think that there's, you know, in some music, some people perceive the music that we're hearing today as shallow to a degree, and I think that it's really hard to do that. Like,
Mm.
I don't know how to. It's just not that fun for me if I can't if I can't use music to, you know, seek my highest self, my highest truth, and to then reciprocate that in service to the rest of, you know, the people listening. And so I don't see that ever changing. And
Mm.
you're right, though, the business aspect of things definitely influence, you know, you know, my thought process in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different ways, which is something that I'm definitely struggling with right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just kind of balancing, like, oh wow, there's like so many grand opportunities that are coming up, and it's almost distracting from the
Mm.
process, you know, of like just being like, if you can imagine yourself meditating in a hall, to then, you know, have, you know, a song playing of a bunch of Buddhist monks chanting like a Lady Gaga song. You know, it's like it's a little distracting. You know, from I don't know. For me, it would be. I don't know if that's an arbitrary example, but
Are you saying from a creative standpoint, or are you talking about from a performance standpoint?
generally, just being a. I feel like that's a good question, Danica. I feel like it's hard to be. It's hard to be yourself sometimes. It's hard to be myself sometimes, like unapologetically and completely me for the social constructs that we all live within and under. So my whole pursuit to anything that I do is to just be comfortable with myself
Mm.
and being okay if energetically I may not be compatible to some, and
Yeah.
learning to love people from the distance that they allow you to love them, you know. And
Mm.
you know, I'm not perfect, but
But isn't that loving? That's loving through more through source's eyes or God's eyes or whatever you want to call it, is that you actually see behind the veil of the mask and you can
yeah,
see the true self back there. And you're like, I love you. I know you're struggling. And I know you just said that to me, or I know you just, did that to me, but like you're doing the best you can, whether it's your family raising you and religion being important and they're doing the best they can, whether it's my dad yelling at me when I was a kid racing and hurting me, and he's doing the best he can. and
sure,
and so, as to me, I feel like it's that you have this beautiful ability to be able to see behind the mask of those people, and I think that's really special. But our triggers, like, that make us insecure, I mean, that's just called being human. Those are
sure,
just those aspects in which we need to heal, and that's so human. And so
yes,
I think you're so far ahead of the game in your vulnerability and how you present and what you're showing the world, because there's so many people that are trying to fit into, shoot, you're like, I don't know, there's no genre for this. So many people are trying to fit into a box. So many
right,
people. There's almost everybody's trying to fit into the box of their phone and figure out, like, okay, how can I look perfect in this box?
right,
And
yeah.
so I feel like you've done a lot of the work.
I mean, I would be lying to say I wouldn't, I didn't wish that I wrote Old Town Road. I would be lying, you know, to say that I don't care that I didn't write that. But I think that the point is, especially as it pertains to what you mentioned earlier about the business kind of uh, acting to influence our creative process, is that like it just gets a little bit harder, because it's like I'm human just like anyone else with needs, perceived needs and desires to feed this shell you know, with everything and all the good stuff and whatever. And so I think that the more that you get and the more that you have, the responsibility that we all have to self becomes a little bit more heavy, for the other variables at play, that don't have anything to do with like what Danica's about, as opposed to like what Danica's trying to sell, you know.
How do you have an accountability process? Do you have your own process to check in, stay checked, you know?
Yeah,
people or practices?
definitely. I like to meditate. I've done the Vipassana retreat. It's like a
Really?
10-day retreat. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you should tell people about that. My friend was talking about doing a Vipassana. She's done 2 already. And
Oh, it's amazing.
I love talking. So I feel like there's probably an aspect of me, I should probably go do a Vipassana, but tell people what a Vipassana is and give them some insight, because this might be something that just like somebody might hear this and be like, that's what I need.
Have you done it?
No.
Oh my God, Danica, I can already tell, like, because you're brilliant and you're very articulate and you have so many ideas and a lot going on. I could tell that if you
all
went,
my pages of notes.
I see you, but I would be really curious to see what you were to create after, you know, going through that cleansing process, if I may, of just kind of sitting and breathing.
Can you describe what a Vipassana is for those who don't know?
Vipassana is a technique I think started by the Buddhist practice. It's pretty much just, you know, mindfulness. So in that, you know, you sit down Indian style or however, and you close your eyes and allow your monkey mind the task that is focusing on the breath coming out of the nose, every sensation that you feel from small to great. And then once you feel that your mind is sharpened and honed in on that, then you move to the sensations at the top of the head, all the way down to the soles of your feet. And you can come up with your own system, but as long as you give your mind the task to feel a sensation at every point of your body for about an hour is how long you usually sit for. It's just like, it's scientifically proven to you know, help with the brain, certain, you know, connectivities that I think go awry in our processes. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could talk more about it, but
it's a 10
pretty
day,
much
10 days
10-day
of
retreat,
silence, right?
10 days of silence. First day you get there, you kind of get the rules, and the women are separated from the men, and you got your living quarters. They put you up for free. They feed you for free vegetarian food. So yeah, so that was pretty much my Vipassana experience. On the 8th day, I remember this weight coming off of my shoulder. Like, you get to a place where you've meditated long enough in the 10-day period, where you can your body, your mind starts to feel more biochemical reactions and responses to what's going on up here, that it should feel like a dissolving, like your whole body is dissolving, because there's so much movement that happens over, you know, very small integers of time. And I just remember a massive release of this feeling of being addicted to being sad. You know, we feel into things and you experience life, and we don't realize that, wow, like we're actually addicted to these feelings that we had when, you know, our friend died, or we broke up, or, you know, whatever it is. Our body remembers that, and until you can get in there and dissolve it.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
So powerful, as you said, as you said, the issue, I heard the issues are in the tissues, but how there's the emotions that get held in the body, and you can see that people are still holding on to them. You can sort of see it in how they present, or you can, these emotions that become so strong, like something happens and then there's an emotional sort of connection, and then that chemical is now produced, and it's like somehow, even though we know it's bad for us, we're addicted, just like drugs or anything else. It's like, it's an addiction, and it's really hard to break those, even if it is just a memory.
Right. Completely. Well said, Danica. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's clear that you do the work. It's clear that you're really present and you're really connected with yourself, which is no mystery why the music resonates so widely and so deeply with people. And I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation, and that feel so grateful for it, and for that sort of a deeper sort of, I'm going to call it that sort of the entanglement that we have with the interview coming today, and that information about it's just resonating with people on an energetic level so strongly. And, it's really powerful. And I don't want your work to be overlooked as just music. It's carrying a greater level of effectiveness than just pure entertainment, even though it is entertaining.
Well, keep praying for me, Danica, because I feel that I have a long way to go. And, though I'm very comfortable in the moment and feeling into myself, I'm also vulnerable to other aspects of life too, that aren't always encouraging of such beautiful fruit. So for that, if I could just be honest, I think it's important to, not take too much credit for the glory that is colors or whatever beautiful thing that comes out of one.
Well, as one of my favorite people to listen to for quick little 15-minute bursts of good information, Abraham Hicks, is that you can't get it wrong and it's never done.
Hey, I'll take that. Thank you.
I have one final question though. Where did the name come from? Where did Black Pumas come from?
We were trading a slew of names via text, Adrian and I. I think he had just come back from Mexico on a vacation, and I thought it was crazy because he kept sending me like cat names. I'm like, what is with you and cats? Like and so he goes, yeah, I've just seen so many like amazing iconography over there, and synchronistically so, one of his friends when he got back home sent him like a jaguar head, and so we were trading names back and forth, and I noticed him being stuck on the cat thing. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, who knows how far this thing is going to go anyway. Well, we can be the cat name. So we settled on Black Pumas because it felt pretty cool. It's
well, maybe you're being called to Peru, because I went to Machu Picchu and there's like a cat head that they would call a puma. Yeah. It's the puma. I feel like pumas are really present in Peru. Like jaguars are very much like, I just was in Tulum, Mexico for a couple weeks, and like jaguars are really popular there. Amazing. Maybe you're called to Machu Picchu.
Maybe so. I feel like you just put it out there, so I got to go now. I got to go. Okay. Maybe I'll see you out there too.
I'd love to go back. You never know exactly what kind of stuff will transpire in an interview and where you might go, but we were meant to have this esoteric conversation.
It felt wonderful. Thank you so much for that breath of fresh air.
Keep doing it, man. I'll be paying attention.
Peace, guys.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.